Today, I am here with Jennifer Askey. Our colleague and friend, Jen Polk, is on vacation. So, hi, Jen, from your vacation. I hope you're having a wonderful time. But Jen actually connected with me with Jennifer Askey, who is a former academic and a coach of faculty. And so, Jen, do you prefer Jennifer or Jen?
Since you have Jen Polk, I'll be Jennifer.
Okay. So it's still Paulina and Jennifer talk academia, talk life after academia. So today, Jennifer is going to share with us her journey out of academia and into her coaching business. So welcome to the YouTube Live, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Paulina. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy Jen connected us. As I was saying earlier, I've known Jen for a really long time, and one of the things I appreciate about her and about most of the people that I meet in this post-ac space is generosity. Like we're all in this together in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something I think the folks I work with in my program, a lot of them are very surprised to find how kind and how generous people are
Yeah,
once they leave academia. Or maybe it's
right.
something about the people who are kind in academia are the ones who end up leaving. But I agree, it is much more
Yeah, like being
supportive
a
and
faculty.
warm. Yeah.
Yeah, being a faculty member doesn't really prepare you to encounter other people's generosity that often. It sort of armors you up for reviewer two, just the 1-2 punch. So yes, it's a pleasant surprise on the other side.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start off? Tell us, what did you do in academia before you left?
Sure. I was a professor of German language and literature. I got my PhD at Washington University in St. Louis, and that is where I met my spouse, my husband, and that's not incidental to my career journey, right? Like you marry somebody, you create a family, and then you get to navigate these things together. And so we were in the same program. I got a PhD. He left after the MA to go do other things. Um, and I eventually got a tenure track position at Kansas State. And so taught there, I got tenure. But we had we had moved around a lot since, so he got a library science degree, and so he started working before I did. So we sort of followed his jobs for a while, and then he followed my job. Um, and what looked really great on paper, right? Faculty member, librarian, obviously a university is going to hire both of us. It never really, it didn't really click in practice. Like one of us was always underemployed and unhappy. Um, and that's really hard, right? It's hard individually, it's hard as a couple, it's hard on the family. Um, Sucked. So I enjoyed what I was doing at K-State pretty much. Um, and he did not enjoy what he was doing at K-State. And once you have tenure, it's like, well, this is it, right? This is where I die. And that just didn't seem like a plausible path for either of us really, but definitely not for him. So that was tenure was sort of the beginning of the end in a way, because it was like, oh, well, if this is where I land and this is where we stay, what does that look like in the long run for both of us and for both of our careers and sense of professional satisfaction? And
So it sounds like this was, a question of prioritizing the relationship and the family over the career, which is something that we in academia are told we're not supposed to do, right? I know so many academic couples that there was somebody in my grad program who was a professor and she lived in the States and her husband lived in Europe, and it was treated as like this was just normal that married couples would do that.
yeah, I knew so many couples, one where they were separated by like just 1 or 2 states, and they did that for, I don't know, a decade or something before she finally got a job in his department. But and did they have, yeah, and they had 2 kids. My favorite though was one was in the South and one was in New England. and they had two kids, and they did that literally for 20 years. And then the university in the South had a job opening in the department that the husband was qualified for, and her colleagues elected not to hire him. And
Yeah.
like, how do you go to work when your colleagues have just told you like your individual happiness, your relationship is not worth it to us at all? Like that was a gut punch, and it wasn't even my relationship. I was like, wow, how do you go to work the next day and look
Yeah.
at those people, right? So we knew a lot of those folks, know a lot of those folks, and that was never in the cards for us. Like I didn't get married to live in a different time zone. And yet, like while we were trying to make it work, we did do that. I was in Kansas with one kid and he was in Germany with another kid for 18 months. Um,
Wow.
that was a wild ride. Um, but not a fun one, not one that you wanted to do in any kind of long-term way. And so it was pretty clear that like we wanted all four of us to be together. How are we going to make that happen in a way that allows everybody to feel like their needs are being met, um, including the kids, but at the beginning, how do we make sure that our professional, creative, intellectual needs are being met, and we're not just like doing a job for a paycheck? Because again, like you don't get a PhD if you want to just do a job for a paycheck. You get a PhD because you want that intellectual and creative itch scratched in really particular ways.
So, as you were realizing that you were going to have to make a change in order for him to also make a change, how did you discover coaching? Was it a long process? Did you like, how did you hear about coaching? How did this all happen?
Sure. So the big change came when he got a really great job offer in Canada. So I took a year's leave without pay and we moved to Canada as a family. And I figured, I'm flexible. I will find something. And I knew that my field, German language and literature, was sort of a non-starter in Canada. Like in the 15 years I've been here, I think there have been like 3 posted jobs, like DOA as a subject at universities. Um, but I figured I would find something. And I did. I worked sort of as a special assistant to a dean and did like new academic program creation at a branch campus of a university in Ontario. Um, and I did that for a couple of years, and I learned a ton about Canadian higher ed. And then, like at the end of that 2 years, the itch was no longer being scratched. Like I was kind of bored and underemployed. And then we negotiated a teaching role for me at the institution where my husband was. And it was this 2 year renewable thing. And it was renewable for like 3 times. And I thought, oh, great. Like in that 6-ish years, I will figure this university out. I will probably add some skills to my skill set. Who knows what will come at the end of those 6 years? But I felt like that gave me a ramp. Um, but it wasn't like in one department. It was me teaching classes across my various specialties. So I was in German, I was in women's studies, and I was in English and teaching young adult literature. So it was a gig, right? It wasn't a career, right? Um, but I figured, I could work with this. This is intellectually stimulating and fun. And then after my first 2 year term, everybody who had the job category I had, everybody who was in that same category, none of us got renewed. It was like, oh, budget, sorry. So my long on ramp just, and then I had nothing. And I knew socially, I knew a coach, and she said, you need me. And I said, I can't afford you. And she said, well, see what HR has at the university. So I talked to a coach who worked for the university, and I did several assessments with her, like workplace style assessments. And her goal for me was like find Jennifer a new job. And I was pretty adamant about not spending an hour in the car every day. We lived in the greater Toronto area. You can easily spend more than an hour in the car every day. And I didn't want to do that. And every job she sent me was like a 55-minute commute from home. And I interviewed for a couple and it didn't work out. And I was pretty bummed. And then I got a tiny amount of, I asked for and received a tiny amount of sort of severance from the university. Probably because my husband was a valued employee, right? Not because normally people who have gigs get anything like that. And I used that little bit of money to hire the person I knew socially. And she did more assessments with me. And we talked about what was possible. But both of these coaches at one point in our engagement said, you might want to look at coaching. It might really suit how you operate. And when the first coach said it to me, I was like, whatever. And when the second coach said it to me, I was like, interesting. So then I reached out and talked to, I don't know, maybe half a dozen coaches. And I think I was really drawn at that point in time. I mean, the work I knew was interesting because I'd been on the receiving end of it. And I saw how being coached took me from like, I'm only capable of doing this one thing. I have a PhD in German literature, for the love of God. Like, that's the only thing I'm good for. Nobody's ever going to hire me to do anything else. Why did I get this PhD? What a dumb idea. Why did I waste 20 years? Oh my God, right? Like that whole, so moving me from this space where like all roads converged on this horrible dead end to like, oh, maybe this is just a new beginning. And by looking inward and figuring out, what do I really care about? This itch that I wanted scratched, can I give a name to that? Does it exist outside of the seminar room, right? Those sorts of questions, and see different possibilities for myself. And I think where it really clicked for me was with that second coach, when we were talking about career possibilities, and I was really like, I need security, I need security, I need security. And she's like, yeah, how has that security worked for you in the past? Like, you've had security and like walked away from it because it didn't really work. Like, is it secure if it requires sacrifices? And at one point she said, what happens if you bet on yourself? I was like, oh, what a novel idea, right? Instead of betting on the institution to give me a sense of identity and purpose and a paycheck, what happens if I bet on myself? So that was the big shift.
I think that's such a powerful reframe for so many people to hear, because that is a huge objection that I hear from people who they'll tell me in one breath that they're miserable, that their health is suffering, that they have to get out of academia, but then they can't leave because they need the health insurance or they need the salary and I completely understand from my own background, coming, being a first gen college student, all of this, that it is terrifying, the idea of taking a leap and not having health insurance or a salary. Um, but I do think, especially in the environment that we're in right now, not just in the US, but really internationally in higher ed, there is a lot of precarity, and tenure does not provide the stability that it used to. And so we think that these institutions, and I'm sure this applies to the corporate world as well, we think that they are providing us with stability, but it's not the same world that it was 40 or 50 years ago that our parents' generation had, where you were coming out with a pension and all these actual benefits. And like that stuff has been scraped away from us and they've clawed it back. And now there's almost no security at all.
Well, and there are states where if you work for a public institution in that state, tenure doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Right. And that's harrowing. And I know people who've, been offered jobs in those states and been like, I don't know, man, is that where I want to go? Right. And so, yeah, the notion of stability it's almost romantic at this point and nostalgic, like, oh, those were the days. And now like you get the pressure and the incredibly long working weeks and the changes in your job, like the jobs that you and I had weren't the jobs that our mentors have had at that point, right? In terms of the demands placed upon you, what the students looked like, the class size, like everything had changed, and that continues apace. So that, you know, the people who had me as a professor, if they were to go into academia, they wouldn't get my job
Yeah.
because the job of a faculty member keeps getting harder.
And I think there's also the flip of that is that people are scared to take the leap because they don't believe in themselves. And so I love what you said your coach told you, that what if you were to bet on yourself? And that is, it's absolutely true, because we do have so many more skills, so much more knowledge, so much more expertise. Just empathy, kindness, right? The ability to serve people out there who need our support, who need our help, and they don't know how to solve the problems that we've figured out how to solve, whether that's applying, you know, to academic jobs or PhD programs or whatever. There are skills and there's knowledge that we have that we can share with people. Um, and it really does make sense to bet on ourselves when you realize how much you have to offer.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that, so the people I work with are by and large in academia and want to make that work for them. I do have clients who are in academia and are on their way out. And sometimes I send them to Jen Polk, and sometimes we do things together, sort of depending on where they are in their journey and what they think they're headed toward. But one of the things that I end up talking with a lot of my clients about is the way that graduate school and the tenure track train you to ask how high anytime somebody says jump, right? You are trained to be constantly responding to requests from others in order to get the prize that you're in the running for, right? In order to get the PhD, in order to get the grant, in order to get the job, in order to get tenure, right? You got to please people. You got to do what they ask. You got to do it on time. You got to do it quickly. You got to do it well. And I mean, that's a burnout treadmill, right? And it doesn't give you a lot of practice in asking yourself, okay, of all of these competing demands on my time, where should I prioritize my efforts so that I feel good, I get appreciated, I get, you know, the pats that I want to get on my shoulder, the gold stars, but also that I feel like my life is full and that I'm not just jumping through hoops for other people. Like we don't get a lot of training in prioritization, in deciding like, oh, this effort is worth it, this effort is less worth it. Not everybody's problem is my problem to solve. And so that responsiveness that's geared into us that I think undermines our sense of being able to steer our own ship. Like that training runs really, really deep. And whether you stay or leave, I think it's really important to decide, like, where do you want to put your effort? Because if all of your effort goes to pleasing other people, like you're still going to feel hollow. So I think that this notion of betting on yourself for me is also like, what kind of career do you want to have if you stay? And what kind of career would you want to have if you want to leave? And figuring out how to be your own boss regardless. Because if you stay in higher ed, you do have a great deal of autonomy, and you can do a lot of intentional job creation there, but we don't get practice in that. We get practice in, oh yeah, sure, oh yeah, sure, oh yeah, sure, until we're just worn totally thin.
And so, connect the dots for us. How did you, so you were working with these coaches, they said you should bet on yourself, you'd make a great coach. What did you do next? And how did you start to build your business?
The first thing I did was when my contract ended was I fell into a deep, dark depression. And one of my coaches was like, and now you go to therapy. we're going to take a break and you're going to go get some help because you're angry and miserable. And you're not, it's hard to be creative and possibility focused when you're angry and miserable. So I went to therapy and I got less angry and less miserable. And while I was in therapy, I started coach training. So the whole process was a year. The training itself was like an intensive 3-day weekend once a month for 5 months, I think. And then 6 months of like cohort-based practice, ending in certification. And while I was doing that, so while you coach, most coach training programs, like you learn the skills in a cohort, you practice them on each other, but you need to practice them on real humans. And so I was reaching out to my professional network, who were mostly German professors, saying, hey, I'm doing this new thing. I have found it incredibly transformational. And for very little money, I would love to offer it to you so that I get practice. And so I spent 6 months coaching a dozen or so of my colleagues. And that, I mean, I'm a much better coach now than I was a decade ago, but even that was a sort of proof of concept, like, oh, the people who I thought would get a lot out of this do get a lot out of this. And so I had the privilege of being married to somebody with a really good job. And so me bringing in what I had brought in as a professor wasn't an immediate necessity. We had some cushion. And so I built a practice, and that was really hard for me. I didn't know other people who were new at this. I didn't have really a business mentor. My coach kind of tried, but I didn't really have a business mentor. I was squeamish about how much do I charge. Like opening QuickBooks gave me hives. Like that whole aspect of it was quite challenging. But I got clients. I did good work. Some of those clients that I got in the first like 2 years after my certification, some of them still work with me. So I was doing good work, and that positive affirmation of, yes, you're doing a good job, right? That kept me going, even though I wasn't making much money and it was kind of frustrating. And then my husband got another great job and we moved. And I asked, as part of his negotiations, if there could be some sort of, I don't know, put me on your vendor list, preferred provider list, because I coach faculty. And they said, oh, that's really fascinating. We need somebody to help us create leadership programming for chairs and deans. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's my dream job. So I got a job doing what was supposed to be my dream for a 3-year contract. And by the end of those 3 years, COVID had hit. A 30% budget cut had hit, like things had changed at the university. I was like, oh, no, no, no. So as my contract was ending, I was like, all right, we ramp up private coaching again. And so that was 5 years ago. And by the time I was done at the University of Alberta, I had sort of a half full slate of clients, and I have been building and growing ever since. And this time around, I'd sort of consolidated, okay, who am I? What am I doing? What really is my message? How much am I charging? And so the business side of it has gotten easier. I've also invested in figuring out how to do that. But yeah, so I've been doing it full time on my own for 5 years now. And but it wasn't a smooth path from, get coaching certification, take over the world. I kind of wanted it to be, and it wasn't. But it is successful enough that most of my clients now come from referrals, which makes me think that, okay, I'm offering something of value and people tell their friends, and that's a good thing to know. So that was the journey, both logistically and sort of emotionally, like, oh, this is great. Oh, this doesn't work. Oh, this is great. Oh, this doesn't work. And going back into full-time employment, I thought, well, maybe I can do the coaching thing and work at an institution, and maybe not, right? So I still feel like I'm kind of tapping around possibilities of like, what's the perfect arrangement of partnering with organizations versus just being a solo practitioner offering things externally. Because I think there are a lot of ways to skin the cat, and I'm not 100% convinced that I always know the perfect answer right now.
Yeah, I think it's an unfortunate reality of a lot of coaching programs is that they teach you how to coach, but then they kind of push you out of the nest and say, okay, go find clients. And there's no guidance in how to actually do that. And I think a lot of faculty probably um, take very easily to coaching itself because we are advisors and mentors and teachers. And the people, when I've seen them deliver workshops or webinars or things, the people who are the best at communicating information are the people who have that kind of teaching and educational background. But none of us, I think, ever imagined that we would be running a business and having to market ourselves. And so
Right?
that's like a huge glaring gap in the skills that you need to run a successful business without burning yourself out on that.
Yeah.
Um, so it sounds like you said you invested in learning how to do that, and you said that most of your clients now come from referrals. I wonder, is there anything else that you do? Are you blogging? Are you posting on social media? What else does your marketing look like?
I'm active on LinkedIn, and I do currently, with the help of some folks in Montreal who run a marketing firm, I do have sort of a LinkedIn outreach automation happening that is automatic for a while, and then when they respond, it becomes very personal. Um, because starting the way I started and working with the people I work with, and getting those referrals, it has kept my audience relatively compact. And I know that to reach the potential that my business has, I need to grow that audience. So I'm trying to do that via LinkedIn, with the understanding that LinkedIn isn't where all of the academics necessarily are, but Jen Polk and I can go on at length about how much we hate Elon Musk and what he did to Twitter, because that is how both of us built our business initially. So Twitter was fabulous in the early years of my business. And now I am no longer on Twitter. So sort of figuring out what is the best platform for who I want to reach and how I want to talk about it. So LinkedIn is the thing. I have a podcast called The Mindful Academy because we moved from Alberta to British Columbia this summer. It has been on hiatus as my life has been chaos. But I am getting ready to start that up again. It's called the Mindful Academy because I also am a longtime meditator. I am getting a meditation teaching certification, but I think of being mindful about your choices, being mindful about your priorities, being mindful about your mental and physical health as you are mindful about your career. So it's a lot about intentional choosing when it comes to building your career. Yeah, but I am on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram. I like my Instagram is mostly my dog. So if you like mini dachshunds, please come check out Jennifer Askey Coach. There will be more, there will be coaching content, but leadership development content, but there's also lots of doggy if you're into that sort of thing.
I am. I'm definitely a dog person. I think we got a cameo from one of my children going into the bathroom behind me earlier, but sometimes the dog also makes an appearance as well. Oh, she is back there. Um, so you said, I'm curious about the meditation aspect and the
Mhm,
mindfulness. Do you bring that into your coaching practice?
mhm, I do. I do. I there are, and this is info for free. So I'm certified in a particular kind of program right now, and as a coach, I have access to it. If you buy it commercially, it's like $1,000. I don't charge people that much. Um, it's a 6-week program called Positive Intelligence, and I've taken clients through that, and they have found, and it's mindfulness and like learning about brain plasticity, neural plasticity, which is good for grown-ups. Like, oh, this is what's happening when I do this. So if I want to create new habits, how can I use mindfulness to help me create that new habit or to help me change a way of thinking about something. So it partners really well with coaching and all sorts of personal growth. And then because I think it's important for people to realize that like whatever's happening for you right now, whatever crisis you feel like you're in, or whatever bad feeling you're having about life and job and career, it's not just you. This is systemic. And while it is systemic, and you might not be able to change it, what do you have agency? And so for me, looking at mindfulness and meditation just reminds you, like, okay, I do have agency over how I respond. I have agency over how I choose to frame this. I have agency over what questions I choose to ask about this. And so I have taken clients through the positive intelligence program, and that works really well in small groups. And then I refer a lot of people to the University of Wisconsin at Madison has the Healthy Minds Institute. I think that's what it's called. And it is run by, I'm going to forget his name, Richard something. You can look it up. He is a close personal friend of the Dalai Lama. He's been putting monks in functional MRIs since there were functional MRIs to put monks in. So he does research on what like mindfulness does to your brain. And they have a program called Healthy Minds. It's an app. It is free on your iPhone or Android. It was initially developed as a class for undergraduates. It is a full like curriculum on what mindfulness does, and brain chemistry and all of that, as well as practice. And if you live in the States, you can give them demographic information that feeds into their research, but it's 100% free. It is research backed. And I really like it. And I really like it for academics because it speaks the language that we want to hear, and gives us sort of the science behind why it is worthwhile to spend 15 minutes a day counting your breaths. And in my own practice, what I have found is the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So if you're sitting there counting breaths or doing a body scan or whatever, your brain is meant to think, it's going to think. You can't shut thoughts off. That's totally fine. But as you do it day after day after day, you notice that the thoughts all follow like one or two patterns. Like you have a pattern. Is it catastrophizing about the future? Is it ruminating on the past? Like, what's your pattern? And once you recognize that pattern, it's like, oh, look, I'm doing that thing again. It doesn't really serve me. How might I now change this? So for me, meditating has really helped me to be compassionate with myself in the past and in the present, and to sort of take a little bit more responsibility for myself in the present and how I plan for the future, as opposed to just like letting stuff happen to me, letting my job happen to me, letting my relationships happen to me. Because when you recognize your patterns, you can intervene in them more successfully.
I love that you're able to pair that with, more of the academic coaching work. I think about who I was when I was in academia, and I was constantly anxious. I mean, gritting my teeth all the time, like always miserable, stressed out, always on edge. And 95% of that was academia. But if I had had some kind of tool like that, if I had been like now I do a daily yoga practice that helps me center myself as well.
Yep. Yep.
And makes me a lot more patient with my kids, which is good. But if I had had something like that in conjunction with some kind of academic coaching, I might have stayed longer. Um, but tell us, who is it exactly that you love to work with now? Who are your ideal clients? What problems are you supporting them with?
Yep. So
Oh,
my,
and sorry, before you
yep.
start, let me add there were a few folks watching, and I just want to invite people watching to ask any questions in the chat, if you have any, as we start to wrap up here.
Absolutely. So my absolute favorite clients to work with are faculty members who are looking at leadership. So either you're interested, like, oh, I might want to be chair or director, or you know that your number is going to be the next one pulled out of the hat. I think we have a lot of sort of reluctant leaders in higher ed because the salary bump you get for becoming a chair is not worth the headache that being a chair is. It's the hardest job in the university or college, in my estimation. And so those people who are like making that transition are my favorite. I also have some clients who have been sort of in and out of academia and government, and they're coming back to academia in a leadership position. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is a different environment. So much has changed. So really, like, who do you want to be as your career matures? I have one of my clients right now is a director of a big scientific center, huge research program, and she's discovering that like that kind of leadership doesn't do it for her. So we're talking about, okay, what does it mean to be a leader in research if you don't have this positional title? How do you want to define that leadership? So it really is about being a leader in your career. Oftentimes that is positional, not always. So if you are in academia and you think you can make a go of it, right? If it isn't destroying your health, if it isn't the end of the road, there are a lot of things you can do around being intentional in creating your own job from within. And that's where coaching is pretty magical.
Are there some patterns that you're seeing crop up, especially nowadays across institutions with folks who are in these positions or anticipating being in these positions?
Yeah, I am seeing so much uncertainty. Um, if and it seems a little bit more acute in the sciences because the funding picture got so scrambled over the last year and a half because of the current administration's shenanigans. But the notion of like, oh, if I move into this administrative role, I kind of know what that looks like because I've seen other people do it. That certainty is falling away. Like, oh, I'm going to get this new job, whether I want it or not. I'm going to be chair. And while that's going on, the university is doing all this other stuff that is going to complicate what I thought I maybe knew about that job. And that seems to be very across the board. So, like, your position might be changing, but the foundation upon which that is built is also changing, and not in good ways, obviously. Like, it's kind of a mess. Everybody is worried about enrollments. And so people are stepping into leadership positions where from day one, they're trying to defend, like, do we get to still have a major? Do we get to still have a department? What good is defense going to do? Do I need to partner? Right? Like, all of these things have never been anybody's problems, and now they're widespread concerns, and they become immediately problematic for people who are stepping into these roles and have very little training. Like, most of the training that people who are in chair positions get, or who are stepping into chair positions, it's here's how to use Workday or PeopleSoft or whatever. Like, it's the managerial components. It's not the existential stuff. It's not the navigating, going from peer to supervisor. It's none of that, and that's where it's really hard. And as it gets harder and budgets get tighter, universities spend less on preparing the people for the hard jobs.
Yeah, it's like you're being thrown into this crisis setting where you're going to have to decide who gets fired and who doesn't, and how do you make a
Yeah.
case for why our entire department or program shouldn't
Yeah.
be cut.
While at the same time, your university is on its third president in 5 years, right? Because this is happening over and over and over again. And the Chronicle will tell you that the tenure of your average university or college president is shrinking because that job sucks, or the board gets invasive and you get thrown out, or what, right? And so, yeah, you're navigating things that are new to you, but in an environment where a lot is new for a lot of people. So you might not even have the leadership or mentorship above you that knows which way is up. So it's
Yeah.
really hard to get perspective. It's really hard to prioritize. It's really hard to take care of yourself in that kind of an environment.
Well, I don't want to end on a depressing note. So,
And on
um,
that cheery note, yeah,
I'll circle it back to what we were saying earlier is that, I think that the the fact that faculty and, chair, dean, leadership roles have become so complicated in recent years. And I think this is true even for like the lowly assistant professor, which I was. We were saying earlier that more is being expected of you nowadays than it was in previous generations. And I know I thought, oh, going to a liberal arts college would be a nice, cushy assignment. I could focus on teaching and mentoring, but then all of a sudden you find out you have to have multiple articles and a book to publish. And it's like, wait, how is this any different than being at a research oriented school? Plus, I'm supposed to, give everything I have to all of my students. And so you really have to do everything at the liberal arts college now. So I
Exactly.
think that, because we've seen faculty and leadership roles changing so much, that just proves that, those of us out there who have met the challenge, who have risen to that bar, risen with those expectations, it should just prove to all of you out there listening that you can step away if you decide that's right for you. You can
Yeah.
build your own business.
Yeah.
There is training out there, whether it's marketing training, whether it's, learning how to post on LinkedIn, like any aspect of running a business that you need help with. There is support out there, getting a coach, whatever. You can learn that too. So, you are capable, you do have the skills, and you can work with
Yep.
somebody lovely like Jennifer who can help you figure out if that's even the right path you want to take.
Yep. And what Paulina and Jen Polk and I and practically everybody else we know who works in this area of like providing services to the people or the institutions in higher ed, we're a generous bunch. You when you leave higher ed, you do kind of leave the dog eat dog mentality, the reviewer too mentality. I mean, there are jerks everywhere, absolutely. But there are fewer jerks in my space now than there were when I was in higher ed.
Yeah, I think because we've been through that journey and so
Yeah.
much of the agony of, I mean, it is often agony. Most people I know who leave do not just leave and go, well, that was easy. Like most of us, I think we go through therapy and we go through this agony of deciding to leave and then actually leaving and then figuring out what you're going to do. We know how hard
Yes.
that is, and we're
Yes. It
happy
is
to
hard.
support other
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
through our networks
Yeah.
to figure out if that's right for you. So.
Absolutely.
Well, I thank you so much for being here. This was such an interesting conversation.
Thank you, Paulina.
If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to work with you, where should they
Mhm.
find you?
So my website is jenniferaskey.com. And my last name is Askey. It autocorrects to Ashley. It's horrible. Um, but at jenniferaskey.com, there's a contact me page. And my email is just my first name at jenniferaskey.com. So Jennifer at jenniferaskey.com. That's the easiest way. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. My dog is Sadie. She's a 9-pound miniature dachshund. She's adorable. I think she's in the next room with my 22-year-old who's still in bed. Yeah, but that's the easiest way to get in touch with me. And as most coaches do, I offer a free, no obligation consultation call where we spend about 45 minutes talking about who you are, where you're at, where you want to go, and if coaching would work for you or would be
Perfect.
aligned with where you want to head. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And I will add all of that information in the show notes. And thanks again, Jennifer.
Thank you, Paulina. This has been lovely. And for those of you who were watching live or who watch later on, hi.